Upon the black sands of Istvaan V is where we're going to jump into Heresy 3, and I think this is a genius idea on behalf of Games Workshop. The system of Istvaan will always be one of those landmark moments. The betrayal becomes common knowledge. We see brother pitched against brother as the legions cleanse their ranks so that the traitors can move forwards with their plans unopposed. We see Primarchs pitched against one another for the first time and emotions boiling through that we didn't really associate with Space Marines prior to the writing of the Horus Heresy series. This setting and the raw, charged kind of emotion of it is a great choice to launch the new edition from. We've all experienced quite powerful emotions, and these are all things that are displayed by characters within the settings. I think this emotional charge within where they're choosing to launch the edition is a really, really clever move, as it gives something relatable to people as they start kind of reading into or doing their research on how they want to get kickstarted with Horus Heresy or the new edition itself. Having that point of relatability is always going to be a great decision when it comes to launching a game and getting your player base connected. I actually think the choice of the setting as well is very telling of what Games Workshop are hoping to achieve with regards to the impact of the new edition and how it will end up sort of looking 2 or 3 years down the line. I think it's really quite safe to say with hindsight that Heresy 2 was a bit of a test edition. It made some great changes. It missed the mark on a couple of things as well. However, it was well received. We've seen the Heresy player base grow over the course of second edition, with new people coming in and people returning back to the setting as well. However, we have to remember that Games Workshop ultimately strives to bring more people into the hobby, have them consume their product and engage with their game systems. And this is why I think Istvaan in particular is a really, really brilliant choice. So for existing players, Istvaan is a trip down memory lane. Back to where it all began with the Black Books, back to where it all began at the end of those opening novels that changed the way we look at how series can be written when it comes to the Black Library. Istvaan really is quite a throwback for hobbyists who have been in the setting for a while. And what's really interesting is the setting itself isn't really that well covered for the most part. We get a bit of coverage at the end of the Fulgrim novel, and we get a few insights from short stories, as well as a bit of coverage from the Black Books. But for the most part, for such a large engagement, Istvaan V isn't massively covered. This has left them a lot of scope for adding new lore, adding new perspectives, adding new novels if they wanted to as well. And I think the addition of new lore and insights into the setting is what's going to really kind of drive a lot of the pre-existing players into sort of Istvaan and what Heresy 3 has to offer. We've already seen them talk about Vulcan's Gift and the new Saturnine equipment featured in the new box that will be launching the edition. These little snippets of lore, which hopefully they will be expanding on, are really something that is going to drive a lot of existing players kind of more towards A, the launch box, but B, actually the new miniatures as they're releasing. You know, are they adding new equipment and things into the army books, and you know, how is that going to be told to us as people that want to consume kind of the setting and bring that to life? Because ultimately Heresy is a pseudo historical war game for the most part. You know, the sides are very set, the factions are very set. You don't quite get the freedoms as you see in like 40k. Paint your Space Marines your way in whatever colors you want. You know, it's a little bit more rigid in its doctrine when it comes to that. So I think Istvaan has left space for Games Workshop to inject some lore, inject some stories, inject a further understanding and appreciation of those moments that led to the galaxy being set ablaze, right? For new players, though, Istvaan offers a great jumping in point. Ultimately, it's the start of what everyone considers to be the heresy. The drop site massacre, if you ask a lot of people, is kind of where they consider the heresy to have begun. Obviously, a lot of people will argue that maybe it was with Erebus and his little hidden cults and the sanctioning of Lorgar and the word bearers. But, really when we look at what is the heresy, when does the betrayal become real, it is on Istvaan. And for newer people into the setting, that means that you're really just kind of stepping into heresy at its starting point. If you want to go away and read the books and follow the story of 30k, you have a much better position to be able to do that from. I think one of the issues with Heresy 2 with regards to people coming into it was kind of set in the mid-heresy. You saw people trying to find their feet a little bit with regards to what led up to these moments or what campaigns affected X, Y, or Z. Starting at the very start of the setting, I think is a much better choice by Games Workshop when it comes to allowing new players to join at a point where the understanding of the setting is very, very easy to engage with. And what's even better is it's one of the largest conflicts with regards to forces amassed in the setting. 7 legions are present with their Primarchs at their head, which has a knock-on effect when we look at kind of getting started with a new edition. A lot of places and a lot of people like to do like slow grow campaigns. They like to do little leagues and things like that to help people get their models built and painted and get gaming. And having 7 legions going head to head with one another is going to be a really, really great way for people to be able to easily add a little bit of story, a little bit of that flavor into their games without really needing to think about the setting too much. If people want to paint Primarchs and things, you've got 7 there. So again, really, really great jumping in point when it comes to kind of like the accessibility for new players coming into the setting. And you'll notice that I am focusing on new players a lot when I'm talking about this, because I think this is one of the really, really key things that we need to kind of understand with regards to the 3rd edition of the Horus Heresy is I think there is going to be quite a large recruitment drive when it comes to getting people into the setting and helping people stay in the setting and build those incredible 3,000 point armies that expand up, and you add Primarchs too and super heavy tanks too and things like that. Because when we assess the legions that they've chosen to champion the new edition, they are legions that are intrinsically very, very easy to get to grips with very quickly at your local Warhammer store. So I asked recently on Instagram with regards to, what are people's opinions with regards to the legions chosen when it comes to the new edition. And a lot of people spoke about the legions being underrepresented. And that's a very fair thing to say. They aren't massively represented within the miniature range. God knows when the Salamanders last had something new released. I think it was maybe Vulcan. And if Heresy 2 is anything to go by, then we know that the hero legions are going to get a little bit more character support as the edition progresses. That's absolutely fantastic, especially for people who are already collecting those legions. But the point I want to make is actually like how easy they are to get painted up to tabletop standard, battle ready, whatever you want to call it. And I think this was a really deliberate choice by Games Workshop. I think it was something that they have intentionally done, knowing their staff are going to get asked questions with regards to what's going to be the best way to paint this. This is a lot of models. What's going to be the easiest way to paint this? And both the Salamanders and Iron Warriors have kind of speed painting very, very accessible to them. I'm not saying other legions don't, and I'm not going to give a really broken down tutorial on speed painting. There's much better painters out there when it comes to things like that than me. But ultimately, if we were to put ourselves in the shoes of someone who needed to help someone quickly find a way to be able to paint up their new box so they can start playing games with their mates or start attending events that they're really excited by, both Iron Warriors and Salamanders make a lot of sense. Over the course of the second edition, we saw a lot of players coming into the hobby wanting to paint those hero legions, and ultimately the forces that are advertised on the box sets are always going to influence people's decisions somewhat, and we see that in Heresy 2 when it comes to the selection of Sons of Horus or painting Imperial Fists, both of which are not inaccessible color schemes, but yellow has always had a stigma around it of being hard to paint. That's not necessarily the case as much nowadays with regards to contrast paints and things like that. The Sons of Horus, I've personally always found a little bit finicky to be able to paint. And we did see a lot of people asking for help with regards to painting these legions. And it's talking about the fact that, they've just got into the Horus Heresy. This is the legion they've chosen. On the Sons of Horus and Imperial Fist groups in particular that I've been following, I saw that come up a lot more than sort of some of the other legion groups. So it is an influential thing. So how easy is it going to be for Jim at your local Warhammer store to give you advice to paint the 2 hero legions? Super easy. One of the best things that the Salamanders have going for them is actually Games Workshop's contrast range. Their green pigments in their contrast paints are some of the best contrast paints. They're really consistent. They're really easy to work with. So when it comes to, I want to play the good guys in the Horus Heresy, I'm just starting out and I really like the good guys in the box art. Good guys, I know, is very, very loose term when it comes to 40k, Warhammer, and the Heresy in particular. But it's not a hard process. You're going to spray them Wraithbone. You're going to get your green contrast paint, get some yellow contrast paint, some black contrast paint. All things that cover very, very well over Wraithbone. That's going to do the bulk of your work. You've got a bit of detailing. You can paint your leathers in contrast as well. Go back in with your metallics and then knock a shade over some stuff if you want to. Pop some transfers on and put your basing effect of choice on. It's pretty straightforward. It's pretty simple. It's not one of those slightly off colours like the Sons of Horus. Or large amounts of black, which can often look really flat sometimes and can be a little bit off-putting to newer players. And then when it comes to the Iron Warriors, I do apologise. The Iron Warriors themselves, again, it's really, really easy to get painted up in bulk. Undercoat them with a lead belcher spray. Go back in, pick out your brass trims. Paint the shoulder pads black. Do that with contrast, and do it with regular paint if you want to. Same with your weapons casings. Hit everything with a shade that's going to work across all of those elements. Go back in, pick your details up, put your transfers on, and base. They're really, really quick when it comes to kind of like batch painting. And it's all stuff that doesn't require specialist equipment. You don't need an airbrush to be able to do those legions quickly by just walking into your local Warhammer store and going, I really want to get started in the Horus Heresy. I think this is a very deliberate choice that the company has made when it comes to the legions they have chosen and why. Ultimately, you can go back in and add your hazard stripes back onto Iron Warriors and your flame motifs onto your Salamanders. But they're not essential. They're obviously things a lot of people strive for, but they are 2 legions that, with regards to what Warhammer stores keep in stock and sell, is going to be incredibly accessible for bringing new players in and giving them easy to engage with tools that will allow them to start knocking out a good volume of their army quickly. And as soon as you start kind of getting 1 or 2 squads deep and people go, yeah, do you know what, I've got this down, this is really quick, this is really easy, that's the kind of mindset that's going to keep people wanting to continue engaging with the setting. Like, actually, I really enjoy painting that. It was really quick. It came out really nice. I'm really pleased with it. I'm going to get another box. I'm going to expand. And in my first video, I talked about actually one of the challenges of the setting being the typical scale of games. Obviously, Zone Mortalis is a bit of an outlier, but when we look at Horus Heresy, we look at these bigger, larger scale games. It's what the system has always been built around, those apocalypse size events. And it requires a lot of work. So giving staff a color scheme that is just consistent and easy to knock out, you can run a paint tutorial on in 30 minutes and have someone walk away feeling really confident they can replicate that, is only going to continue to increase the player base and increase the retention of players coming into the system, which is absolutely awesome. I think the choice of Istvaan is something that a lot of people have really overlooked. And the Legion choice in particular is something that I don't think people have properly broken down when it comes to kind of the impact that has when it comes to the recruitment of players into the game. And the trickle down effect from that, if you're an existing member of kind of the Heresy community, is absolutely brilliant, because this really starts to show that Games Workshop are thinking about the game not just past, what I think Heresy 2 was to a certain extent, which was testing the waters and trying to get veteran hobbyists to re-engage and enjoy the new plastics and, spend a little bit more money on the system that they've been enjoying, because they were phasing out the resins anyway and they didn't want to face that backlash. But it really shows that Heresy is becoming a mainline staple. And that's so exciting, because it means that ultimately we're going to start seeing Heresy releases much more in line with what we're seeing when it comes to 40k and Age of Sigmar releases. The Heresy releases through the second edition were predominantly a new armor, marks and dreadnoughts, predominantly vehicles, which was a never-ending meme, resin characters, and upgrade frames. I think going into Heresy 3, we're going to see a bit more of a move away from the upgrade frames. I think we're going to start seeing more unique units, more dedicated sculpts when it comes to certain things. With this kind of shift in mindset that I think we can extrapolate from some of the choices that Games Workshop have made. And, today's a great example of it, with the pre-orders going up for the new turrets and support platforms for the Marines ahead of the new release. We've already seen these really, really interesting new kits, and they are completely new kits coming out and, going up for pre-order now, which is going to be absolutely fantastic. But those kits themselves aren't just the weapons platform plus a Mark III or a Mark IV, Mark VI body or a Mark II body, or upgrade frames that you can then attach to some of your leftover tactical Marines because you didn't need a full 20. They've stepped away from that. They could have quite easily done, just the weapons carriages with some upgrade frames with various arms and accessories on and a couple of different heads, or like maybe a new backpack chopper that doesn't look like kind of your standard Vox casters and augury scanners that you get in the standard kits. This is really quite an interesting one when it comes to it. I think over the course of kind of Heresy 3, the way support comes into the game system is going to change with the decisions that have been made here. And I think one of the big decisions that, again, like outside of just the accessibility for new players to make a dent in their army when they get started, if they want to paint box art, it being easy to teach and have the tools readily available and there with someone that can teach them kind of how to do it quite quickly, is going to kind of trickle down into how we see the system continue to grow and evolve. If this is kind of speculative and very much wish list theory at this point, but if Games Workshop were to continue with the trend of picking key moments over third edition and using them as a way to expand out model ranges, then what's to stop them halfway through the edition doing the Schism of Mars and looking at continuing to flesh out more of the Mechanicum and adding more of their units into plastic. They still have quite a large range that's predominantly resin, and we've seen a lot of the Dark Mechanicum stuff in the Imperialis game kind of coming into the setting as well. Dark Mechanicum being something that has been kind of dabbled with in a PDF up until this point, but not really covered with kind of the gusto that I think a lot of people would like to see that faction be engaged with. And then other conflicts around that scale, those like perhaps looking at the Secret Wars, bringing the Knights Errant back into the fold and their rules alongside Sisters of Silence and the Demons of the Ruinstorm, which have all kind of fallen a little bit by the wayside. But I think picking these huge pivotal moments as opposed to sort of making up a campaign as per kind of the Cathonia campaign that wasn't really covered or mentioned in anything before second edition, as a way of fleshing out the various different factions in a timely manner, in a way that people feel like their faction is getting good continued support. Be really interesting to see. Ultimately, this is something that is going to be at Games Workshop's discretion. I do genuinely hope that they take the way that they are trying to launch Heresy 3 and continue with it over the life cycle of this edition, because if they get a good amount of the factions into a well fleshed out plastic range, it just means when the next edition rolls around and they go, hey, we're still missing XYZ, like they're just dropping those last couple of bits in, just kind of continuing the conversion across to plastic in a much more manageable way. But hopefully Heresy 3 is going to be one of these big pushes that we're going to see for a couple of years, a massive influx in kits and support. And as I say, I think from choosing the setting they've chosen and choosing the hero legions they've chosen, I think this is a really interesting and potentially very, very exciting time when it comes to the setting and what it potentially means for hopefully a growing community and a much more dedicated kind of long-term support from Games Workshop with regards to releases and the forms those releases are going to take as well. However, I could be totally wrong with assessing all of the choices that I've looked into over the course of this. And if you think that I've missed something or that I'm woefully wrong, feel free to let me know in the comments down below. If you've enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe. And if you want to see what's coming off of my hobby desk and some of the shots that will be turned into guides for various different things like practical camo recon marines and things like that, head over to my Instagram. You can find me at It's Heresy, nice and easy. And check in there to see what's going on. And if you want to have a chat about your own projects or ideas you've got going forwards, shoot me a message. I'd love to hear about what you've got going on in the setting. But guys, I hope you've had a great day, and thank you so much for making it to the end. I hope the new releases and all the news coming off Warhammer Community keeps you content until the new kit's arrived. So have a fantastic time, and again, thank you so much, folks. Have a good one.